there was in LA. I fell in love with LA and I fell in love with movies. And I always kind of thought in the back of my mind, I really like to do that. So I took all the hard subjects I could take in high school and I got A's and everything. And when I graduated, it was 1947, and all the GIs were coming back, taking all the jobs because they had a right to them and they were promised to them for when they got back. So there were no jobs to be had, really, for new people getting into work. I applied every place in my hometown, Endicott, New York, and I didn't get a job. I didn't get a job. The only job I could get was in a shoe factory where I was working during the war at 14 years of age and working with all the immigrants and everybody that was, uneducated. I wasn't better than them, but I studied harder and worked harder. And I thought I would really maximize my opportunity, and I found that I went back to nothing. So I planned to go to California, and suddenly interrupted by the Korean War. The draft had been canceled and then reinstated. If I had known I was going to go into the service, I'd have gone right after high school. It would have been opportune for me. So anyway, I was 19, going on 20, and I got a notice I was being drafted, and I couldn't stand the thought of being drafted and going to the Army. So my choice was to go to the Air Force, and instead of 21 months, 3 years. Well, the government didn't really keep all their promises, as you might have heard or well known. And 4 years later, when I got out, I was beginning to look around again, and I was to pursue my dream to go to California and at least try to get some work in movies. Excuse me. And so I went to LA and I took advantage of my GI Bill, and I went to college at LA City and LA State. And I studied acting, advertising, marketing, broadcasting, radio, television, writing, everything I could. And I graduated with all A's there. And I went out to try to, while I was in college, I had the opportunity. A friend of mine's dad was an executive at one of the big advertising agencies, and he had an in at MGM. So my friend's name is Peter, and he asked his dad to get me on the call board at MGM like he was. And so then you had call board where there were extras, but they didn't call you on a board. They called you specifically to be in thing on what we called a non-union waiver, and they'd give you a chance. So in other words, the union people would sit in the first and second and third seats in the theater or whatever they're showing, and then the non-union waivers would sit in the seats beyond. So that's what I did, and I worked in 12 movies in the 50s in Hollywood, and most notable, I guess, was Blackboard Jungle. And it was a very avant-garde movie at the time because it was the first one that really straight out dealt with juvenile delinquency. And it was Sidney Poitier's first movie, Vic Morrow's first movie. And then after that, I worked in Paul Newman's first movie. I worked in a movie with Doris Day and James Cagney, Love Me or Leave Me. I also did a movie when I was still in the Air Force. They used my airplane to play the Enola Gay in a movie called Above and Beyond about the dropping the first bomb on the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. So I was still hooked on it and everything. So unfortunately, again, I'm going to write a book about the art of untimeliness. Because at that time, television was coming on. Movies were taking a dive. The star system was gone. And it was really impossible to get any work in movies doing anything unless you're related, had connections, or who knows what. Oh, one other thing. There was a renowned scout for movies who worked for Universal. And in order to get work with him, and he was the only one who was hiring because Universal was the only one really making movies because they would take great scripts and then put them in movies with unknowns or maybe one known actor. And they made movies and they made a lot of money, like, Pillow Talk and stuff. So they had guys, just like, the Tab Hunter, Rory Calhoun, Rock Hudson, and all these guys who were very intimate with Henry Wilson, and that's how they got work. So again, the door slammed in my face and everybody else's. All the actors were leaving the studios and going to television. So television wasn't offering anything either unless you had connections or experience and so on. So I figured, well, okay, what am I going to do now? So I decided maybe I'll take a roundabout way to get in, and I work in radio and TV. And so I started applying at radio stations, and I was very lucky to get a job in California for my first job, because everybody else had to go to Idaho or North Dakota or something like that to get a job. And I got my first job at a radio station in Oceanside. It was the first radio station that was on the air between LA and San Diego, local radio station. And we put it on the air in 1956, and that was my first full-time radio job, although I did some other work on radio, but it wasn't a full-time job. And it was fine. It was a great hit. It was a smash, and it was so successful that after about a year, the owners sold the station. There were 10 businessmen put in $10,000 each, $100,000 to put the station on the air. We did so well in the first year that they sold it for a great profit. And that's where things started to slide. I was the only person that kept on the staff. My evening show was 6 to 9 p.m. That's all I did, 3 hours a night. Suddenly, I was moved to morning, and I worked 12 hours shifts. And it was pretty brutal. So finally, I had enough of it, and I was ready to leave. And a friend of mine I went to college with called me. He was working in a little station in Banning. And he said, listen, he said, if you're looking for a job, a guy just offered me one, and I don't want to take it. I like it where I am here, but maybe you should apply for it. And it was KFXM in San Bernardino. And the manager was Ben Pascal. And it was a newly formed group, Pascal, Tullis, and Hearn. Pascal was the guy who put it all together. Tullis was the advertising guy, and John Hearn was an FC attorney. So it was a pretty good group. And Pascal was the sales manager for the Liberty Network. And that was the first all sports network. And he was there, and it didn't last that long. So he got together and got it. Anyway, moving along here, while I was there, I got to work a TV show in Bakersfield, and it was a syndicated show. And in the meantime, I just kept on keeping all my connections and so on. So things got so good in radio for the next several years. that I stayed in it, dabbled in my TV, and then I got offered by my company to move to Hollywood and run all the Tullis and Hearn radio stations in a brand new building, the first high-rise building in the city of Los Angeles, at the corner of Sunset and Vine, called the Sunset Vine Tower. And from there, I was then connected with all the record promotion guys and the artists, and I got very involved with a lot of people there at the time. And I was invited. Got myself on every mailing list there was, every record company, every movie company, every public relations, everything. So I got invited to all the parties. Sometimes I'd go to 2 or 3 parties in a night. So I was living pretty good. And so then, as all things will come to an end, after 3 years there, they began selling the Tullis and Hearn stations off one by one. And the only one they had left was KFXM, KDUO, Caffey in Bakersfield, and KDEO in San Diego, and they started selling those off. So on the trip back to Hollywood from San Bernardino with John and Howard, quiet for a long time in the car. Then finally, Howard said, "Oh, John and I were talking." And I thought, "Oh shit, what?" And they said, "Well, you know, you did such a great job in Bakersfield, and we're selling off stations one by one, but we got a station that's really in trouble, and we got a new one that we're just acquiring, and it needs a lot of help." So I said, no, absolutely not, under no circumstances, don't. And they talked me into it. They said, "Well, we really need you. We wouldn't ask you to go there if we really didn't need you that much." So I said, "Okay, I'll do it for 90 days. Another turning point. I was invited to a party thrown in San Bernardino by Erwin Zucker, who was a record and book promoter at the time. He decided he'd throw a party, invite both stations, KFXM and KMEN, and invite both stations to the party at the same time. Well, several of the guys that got fired from KFXM, and a couple that left on their own, wound up at KMEN, and they were at the party. Bill Tanner, who I brought to California from Phoenix, Arizona, said to me, "Al, you know, I really like you a lot, but I'm sorry to say this. You don't have a chance. You're going down, and you're going to go down with this radio station and the whole thing. It's the biggest mistake you ever made in your life." And then pretty soon, William F. Williams says to me, who I gave the first job in radio in Bakersfield, he says, "Yeah," he says, "you know, you did me a favor giving me my first job." He says, "But I got to tell you, you're doomed. You're not going to make it. We're too good, too strong, and we're coming on too big." And a couple of other people, I can't even remember who they all were. Not Tanner. Anyway, a couple of the other jocks that were with us at one time said same thing. And it just ticked me off. You just can't say to me, "You're not going to make it. You're going down. You know, you don't have a chance." It's the last thing in the world you're going to say to me. So we were all drinking, and I got madder and madder, and I finally left. And I was in the car with my then wife, driving to a motel that the station had traded out a room for. And I'm driving down, and I'm saying, "Those sons of bitches, they've got their nerve. They can't say that to me." And I was so furious, I was pounding my fist on the dash, just making all kinds of noises, swearing and hollering. And I decided I'm going to go back there, and I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to use some of the tricks I learned and did in Bakersfield to get started. And I'm gonna make those guys eat their words. It took a little while, a few months, but we did.